The 2020 Tokyo Olympic and Paralympic Games are quickly approaching, despite all the troubles that the organizers have faced since the pandemic began. After being postponed from last year and rescheduled for this year, and despite the growing concerns over them being hosted even this year, organizers have explained that a cancellation at this point is highly unlikely. This has led to a whole new group of rules for everyone involved, from athletes to journalists to fans and spectators, with health and safety at the forefront of all of the new guidelines. Some of these rules were most definitely expected, while some others may be a bit more surprising. Let's not waste any time and dive right into the top 10 banned activities at the Tokyo Olympics. Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have high fives. This is one that honestly seems to have been banned almost worldwide for the last year and a half, so it really isn't too surprising to see it on this list today. Because of the pandemic, high fives have been officially banned for the Tokyo 2020 Olympics, but I'm not sure if that is both between the athletes as well as in the stands. It is unclear if the elbow bump that many people have been subbing out for high fives will be allowed, or exactly how they'll monitor any high five activity, but hey, this is the first Olympics that is coming in on the tail end of a pandemic, so despite it being a bit of an odd rule, I can appreciate them doing everything they can to keep everyone safe and healthy. In our number 9 spot today, we have public transit. Many of us know what it's like to be jam-packed onto the subway or on a bus without an inch of personal space, with some stranger leaning on you for some reason. Throughout the pandemic, with the number of people using transit dropping due to working from home and the closing of businesses, that is something that certainly has been less common, and the Tokyo Olympic organizers are trying to keep it that way. While they can't outright ban public transit, as it is of course necessary to many people, the organizers are trying their best to curb people from using it in terms of spectators, but for athletes, things will be a little different. The athletes in the games are actually banned from public transit, as they have their own vehicles dedicated to take them where they are going in order to try and help keep them as safe as possible. There are some athletes who have still expressed their concern with all the athletes using the same buses, so maybe there will be even further precautions put in place, but at least steps are being taken for everyone's protection. In our number 8 spot today, we have drinking. Tokyo has seen many restrictions on the sales and consumption of alcohol throughout the pandemic, so this one most definitely doesn't really come as a surprise. It is believed that alcohol consumption would only encourage close contact, loud speaking, as well as just general mingling in bars and restaurants, which is what led to it being banned for the 2020 Olympics. Organizers were considering allowing alcohol at the venues, but following public outcry, things quickly changed. Although one of the main sponsors of the Olympics is Asahi Breweries, which is a Japanese global beer, spirits, soft drinks, and food business group that has its headquarters in Tokyo, they have also agreed with the decision to ban the sale of alcohol. This of course will be a major loss of income for the games, but health and safety is of course much more important than anything else. In our number 7 spot today, we have cheering and yelling. As it turns out, the organizers of this year's Olympics are pushing for a near-silent event. As it has become abundantly clear on this list, the organizers really are doing everything they can in order to not turn the Olympics into a super spreader event, and they most definitely have their work cut out for them. While it would be slightly bizarre to have no cheering at a sporting event, it is just another one of those rules that is created with everyone's safety in mind. I'm obviously not a doctor or a scientist, but I guess this rule comes from the idea that louder cheering and yelling is more likely to spread germs. Despite any spectators having to wear masks to any and all events, it seems like this is just another additional rule to help even further. In our number 6 spot today, we have autographs. While the safety of everyone is extremely important, the athletes certainly take a bit of a priority at this event. Similar to the banning of the athletes of public transit, to further keep them from coming in contact with the general public, the athletes will not be permitted to sign autographs for fans. I'm sure this would be upsetting to many of those who are excited to meet their favorite athletes, and probably for the athletes who I'm sure were equally as excited to meet fans, but it truly is for the best that this won't be allowed at this year's games. We all can understand that fans can sometimes get a little too excited or enthusiastic, and might come a little too close to the athletes, which would potentially compromise their safety. I can't think of a worse scenario than an athlete training their whole lives to get to this moment and then being unable to compete due to contracting COVID. It may seem like a dramatic move, but it's probably for for the best. In our number 5 spot today we have Foreign Spectators. In March of this year it was announced that any international spectators would be banned from attending this year's games. It was of course, like everything else on this list, a decision made in regards to the pandemic and concerns over the spread of COVID. This wasn't really a shocking decision as many countries still have many international travel restrictions implemented for any kind of non-essential travel, so it really does just make sense. Any international spectators that had already purchased tickets of course received a refund, and while this would of course be devastating to those who are really looking forward to attending the games, it is most definitely understandable why they would be prioritizing the health and safety of those in Tokyo above everything else. All we can do is watch from the comfort and safety of our own homes and hope that the next Olympic Games will see everything return to normal. Fingers crossed. In our number 4 spot today we have bars. Similar to the public transit restrictions, the visiting of bars certainly has their own kind of restrictions as well. There simply can't just be a ban on bars and restaurants, as people who are not planning on attending the Olympics should be allowed to go out, as well as the fact that these businesses should not suffer just because of the games, but those who are attending or participating in the games don't have the same freedom. Those who are attending as spectators are asked to refrain from doing basically anything else other than what is absolutely necessary. Because they want to limit the chance of anyone attending the events contracting COVID, the organizers are asking spectators not to enjoy celebratory drinks in bars and restaurants while the games are ongoing to limit the risk of transmission. Athletes who are participating in the games are not allowed to go to bars or restaurants even after they are finished with their events because they don't want anyone spreading the virus in the athletes' village. In fact, all of the athletes are only allowed to eat in designated dining halls in an attempt to keep them as safe as possible. In our number 3 spot today we have the athlete celebrations. I personally have never been an Olympic athlete, but I can only imagine that aside from being an Olympic level athlete and getting to represent your country on a global scale, one of the best parts of the games would be the social aspect, but this year's games are most definitely not going to include that. As much as is possible to enforce, athletes will be prohibited from celebrating. This is said to include cheering and yelling, celebratory close contact with other athletes such as hugs and, as I mentioned before, high fives, as well as any other social engagements outside of the actual games themselves. There's no going out with other athletes after the games, no dining with other athletes. You get the idea. Basically, the athletes are there to compete this year, and that is mainly all they'll be allowed to do. There really is even a restriction on talking in an elevator if you're with another person. They absolutely are not messing around this year. In our number 2 spot today we have breaking the rules. Okay, so this one seems fairly obvious, but did you know that there's a full playbook of rules for the athletes, and there have been clear consequences laid out for any rule breaking, and some are actually super serious? The Olympic Games Operations Director at the International Olympic Committee said, "We expect you to play by the rules, but if you don't, there will be sanctions coming your way," which honestly is kind of an eerie threat. The new rules aren't only for the athletes but also for guests, and the punishments could include fines, losing their accreditation, being disqualified, and even deportation. As everyone's eyes will be on the athletes, it's imperative they follow the rules, and for the safety of everyone involved, any spectators also need to be as careful as possible. And finally, in our number 1 spot today we have tickets. Apparently if you bought a ticket to the games this year, that does not mean you'll be allowed to actually attend, because of the fact that more tickets were sold than the available capacity with the new COVID restrictions. A lottery system will now be used. Venue capacity will either be restricted to 50% or a maximum of 10,000 people, and while the organizers did give ticket holders a chance for refunds, there are still too many ticket holders for the limited capacity, so that now has led to this new system being implemented. At the moment there are 4.48 million tickets that have been sold, but that number still needs to be reduced to 2.72 million. It isn't quite clear exactly what sort of system will be used, but it is said that the ticket holders who are successful in the lottery will know and be confirmed by July 6th, which is just 17 days until the opening ceremonies. If you're a ticket holder watching this video right now, may the odds be ever in your favor. Alright guys, that has been our list for today. Thank you so much for checking it out. Make sure you watch the 2020 Tokyo Olympics. Cheer for Canada. Well, you don't have to do that. Anyways, I've been your host today, Olivia Kozlowski, and I'll see you next time. Bye. To keep them as safe as possible. In our number 3, how many times do I say safe as possible in this, or transmission? In our number 3 spot today,